Welcome back, dear one, and welcome to Whispers from the Cottage. My name is Marit, and I create these gentle sleep stories, so women like you can have a place to return to, a quiet corner of the night where you don't have to try or rush or be anything other than who you already are. Every story I make is an invitation to soften, to breathe, to let the world loosen its hold, so you can find your way back to yourself, slowly, kindly, and without pressure. Tonight's story is especially tender. It's about a woman who spent years chasing perfection, believing she needed to become better before she could finally rest, until one evening something in her heart whispered that she was already enough, that she always had been. As you listen, I hope you feel that same softness settling around you, a gentle remembering that you don't have to earn your worth, or your rest, or your peace. So settle in, dear one. Find a comfortable place to lie down. Let your shoulders melt and allow the day to slip slowly away. Take a deep breath in and an even softer breath out. You are safe here, and I'm so glad you're with me tonight. Let's begin the story. The morning light drifted gently across the walls of Elena's small cottage, brushing soft strokes of gold over the wooden floorboards. It was the kind of light that asked for nothing warm, patient, unhurried, but even such tenderness could not soften the heaviness that lived in her chest each time she opened her eyes. For before she fully woke, before she stretched her limbs or let her breath settle into its natural rhythm, the same thought whispered itself into being. Today, I will become the woman I'm supposed to be. It came every morning, delicate yet demanding, a promise wrapped in pressure, a hope threaded with exhaustion. Elena lay there for a moment, her blankets warm, her pillow soft beneath her cheek. It would have been easy to stay in that fragile piece a little longer, to let the quiet hold her. But the thought pushed harder, insisting that rest was a luxury she had not earned. With a slow exhale, she rose from the bed. The wooden floor felt cool beneath her bare feet as she crossed the room. Outside the window, the forest stood untouched and serene. Mist floated between the trees like pale ribbons. Birds whispered their first morning calls. Everything in nature was exactly as it was meant to be, unrushed, unpolished, whole. She wished she could feel the same. Her morning began the way it always did. She moved to the kitchen, lit only by the soft blue light of dawn. Glass jars lined the counter, the juices she had prepared the night before. The liquids shimmered in shades of green and amber, carefully measured for nutrients and promises. She unscrewed one of the bottles and drank it slowly, letting the cool, earthy taste settle on her tongue. It was meant to nourish her. It was meant to heal her. It was meant to fix her. But the moment she placed the empty bottle down, a familiar wave of disappointment washed over her. Not because of the juice, but because she could already hear the part of her mind that never rested. You should have made it fresher. You should drink 2, not 1. You should be stricter today." Her breath caught in her throat. She blinked the thoughts away and opened her notebook, the one with the linen cover and the neat handwriting inside. Every page held lists, goals, rules, reminders of everything she believed she lacked. Daily perfection plan, sunrise cardio, detox tea, stretching sequence, no sugar, no gluten, no resting until evening, no mistakes. The lists were meant to guide her, but over time they had become chains. Invisible, silent, heavy. Elena traced the edge of a page with her fingertip. She could feel the pressure building already, the narrowing of her chest, the tightening of her thoughts into something sharp. If I can just follow everything today, if I can just be disciplined enough, if I can just try harder, perhaps then she would finally feel proud of herself. Perhaps then she would finally feel beautiful. The thought stung. She placed the notebook down and turned toward the mirror hanging quietly on the wall. It was small, framed with carved oak. She had chosen it years ago when she moved into the cottage, believing it would become a companion, a place where she could admire her strength, her growth, her changing self. But now she looked at it cautiously, fearing what she might see. Her reflection gazed back at her with soft brown eyes, her hair still tousled from sleep, her body wrapped in a simple cotton nightdress. There was nothing wrong with what she saw. In fact, there was a quiet beauty to her, gentle, subtle, unforced. Yet she stepped closer as though inspecting a wound. Her eyes moved to the curve of her waist, the softness of her arms, the lines of her thighs. Each detail became a verdict. Each curve became a reminder of what she believed she had failed to achieve. She touched her stomach lightly, as if apologizing to it for simply existing. Not enough! The words formed before she even realized they had. She closed her eyes quickly, as if shutting a door. The mirror had never been her enemy. Only the voice inside her was. She turned away and began her morning workout routine. The cottage filled with the sound of her breath, steady at first, then strained. She pushed herself harder, bending, lifting, twisting, stretching beyond comfort. Outside, the sun climbed higher, lighting the tops of the trees, but inside, Elena moved in shadows of self-judgment. Her legs trembled, her arms ached, her heartbeat thudded painfully in her ears. But she didn't stop. She never stopped early. Stopping meant weakness. Stopping meant she wasn't committed enough. When she finally allowed herself to rest, she sank onto the wooden floor, sweat cooling on her skin. Her lungs pulled in air that felt too thin, too sharp. She closed her eyes and waited for a small spark of pride, a flicker of satisfaction, something to tell her she had done well. But the silence inside her remained hollow. You could have done more. You should have done more. The thoughts coiled tightly around her ribs. She pressed a hand to her forehead. She felt dizzy. And yet she forced herself up. There was still so much to do. Her list was only half complete. She prepared her second juice of the day, poured over ice. She drank it even though she wasn't thirsty. Then she made her detox tea, steeping herbs that tasted like bitterness and obligation. She didn't enjoy the flavor she never had, but she told herself it was necessary. Everything she did lately was necessary. Everything she avoided was forbidden. She barely remembered what she liked, what she felt, what she needed. Her needs had become the first things she sacrificed. As the hours passed, her body tightened, her thoughts narrowed, her energy thinned. She felt herself moving through the cottage like a guest inside her own life, following rituals, following rules, never questioning the softness she denied herself. By early afternoon, the sunlight shifted, casting amber across the kitchen. Elena stood by the sink, staring out the window at the forest. The mist had lifted, revealing ferns and wildflowers, birds fluttering from branch to branch. The world outside was alive, unconcerned with perfection. A bird landed on the window ledge for a moment, tilting its small head. It wasn't flawless, it wasn't trying, it simply was. Elena watched it with a strange ache in her chest, admiration mixed with longing. The bird flew away effortlessly, its wings beating the air without hesitation. She felt her own shoulders heavy, almost immovable by comparison. She leaned on the countertop, feeling her strength drain in a quiet, steady ripple. Her routines were beginning to hollow her out from the inside. She had known it for a while. Her body had whispered it in small ways: fatigue, headaches, aches that lingered. But she ignored them. She always ignored them, because she believed she was not allowed to rest until she became the woman she imagined, the perfect vision of herself, who would finally deserve ease, finally deserve peace. She sighed, a soft, trembling sound that felt like the edge of a breaking point. It echoed faintly in the quiet cottage. Her eyes drifted once more to the notebook lying on the table. Its presence felt heavy, almost accusing. She imagined closing it forever. She imagined letting the pages stay blank from this moment on. But the thought frightened her. Who would she be without her pursuit? What would remain if she stopped trying? Would she still be someone she could love? The questions brought a sting of tears to her eyes. She sank into the small wooden chair beside the window. The cushion was soft, worn from years of use. She let her body settle into it slowly, as if her muscles feared the unfamiliar embrace of gentleness. For a moment, she did nothing, absolutely nothing. It felt strange, uncomfortable, almost forbidden. But her breath began to deepen, her shoulders softened, her heartbeat steadied. She looked outside again. The forest seemed to breathe with her leaves swaying, branches shifting, the quiet hum of life surrounding her cottage. A memory stirred gently in her mind, the woman she used to be, long before the lists, before the restrictions, before the endless striving. A younger Elena who used to walk barefoot in the grass, who laughed easily, who loved her body not because it was perfect but because it carried her through the world. A lump formed in her throat. Where had that version of her gone? Where had she hidden her? Elena folded her hands in her lap and closed her eyes. For the first time in a long time, she let herself feel the weight she had been carrying. The weight of wanting, the weight of comparison, the weight of believing she was unfinished, incomplete. Tears slid down her cheeks slowly, quietly, almost shyly. Not dramatic, not loud, just honest. Her breath trembled. She didn't cry because she was weak. She cried because she had been strong for too long in the wrong way. Outside, the light shifted again, turning the room a soft shade of gold. The warmth touched her skin like a gentle hand, reminding her that the world could be kind even when she wasn't kind to herself. She sat there until the tears ran dry, until her breath steadied, until her body softened beneath her. When she finally opened her eyes, the forest was still there, unchanged, patient, welcoming. Something inside her whispered, softer than a sigh, there must be another way to live. Not a solution, not an answer, just the faintest possibility. She held onto that whisper like a fragile thread of hope, and though she didn't realize it yet, that tiny shift, that one small breath of doubt toward the life she had been forcing herself to live, was the beginning of everything, the start of the unraveling, the start of remembering, the start of coming home to herself. Morning bled into day with a kind of quiet inevitability in Elena's cottage. Life moved in gentle circles outside the forest, the birds, the shifting light, but inside, her days had turned into straight lines of obligation, marching from one rule to the next. The cottage itself was small and lovely, with worn wooden beams and shelves filled with books, dried flowers, and little balls of stones she had collected from the river. It had once felt like a sanctuary, a place where time slowed down and her heart could breathe. Now it felt like something else entirely. It had become a place of measurements and conditions, a quiet stage where she tested herself over and over again. The day after her tears at the window, Elena woke before the sun. The sky was still a dark blue, the edges of dawn only just beginning to glow. For a brief moment, as she lay in bed, she thought about staying where she was. Her blankets were warm, her pillow cradled her head perfectly, her body hummed with a heavy kind of tiredness that asked gently, please, just a little longer. But then the familiar wave of urgency rose. You're already late. Early progress is better. You can't fall behind again. She inhaled sharply, as if pulling herself together, and forced her eyes fully open. The ceiling above her looked back, calm and wooden, and uninterested in her battles. She swung her legs over the side of the bed and placed her feet on the cool floorboards. There was no greeting, no smile to herself in the morning, just a mental checklist beginning to scroll. In the kitchen, the air felt still. She reached for the glass bottles in the fridge, the ones she had filled the night before. Dark green juice, pale lemon water, a cloudy mix of vegetables and fruits blended into something thick and tangy. She lined them up on the counter, as she always did, one for now, one for mid-morning, one for after her workout. They looked like potions waiting to transform her into someone better. Elena twisted off the lid of the first bottle, and drank slowly. The taste was sharp and grassy, with a faint sweetness underneath that never quite balanced the bitterness. She didn't love it. She never had, but loving it wasn't the point. It was good for her. It was cleansing. It was part of the plan. She drank every last drop, and when she set the glass down, she waited as if expecting to feel immediately lighter, cleaner, closer to the woman she imagined she was supposed to be. But she just felt the same body, the same mind, the same quiet ache. She turned away before disappointment could sink its claws too deeply into her, and reached for her notebook. It lay on the table, exactly where she had left it. She opened to the new page she had prepared for today. Wednesday, reset. 45 minutes cardio, 20 minutes strength, 10 minutes stretching, juice only until noon. No bread, no sweets, no naps, no missing anything. She stared at the list, the mass. Words stared back. There was no space on the page for how she felt, no line that said, "Listen to your body," no permission to be tired or gentle or human. She closed the notebook with a soft, resigned sigh and went to change into her workout clothes. They clung a little tighter than she wanted them to, and even that small sensation brought a twist of shame. You should have tried harder yesterday. You should have eaten less. You should be further along by now. The thoughts did not shout. They were quiet, familiar, like background music she had forgotten could ever be turned off. She began her workout in the small open space between the kitchen and the sitting area. She had moved furniture weeks ago to create more room, pushing the table closer to the window, rolling the rug to one side, clearing the way for the routines she believed would save her. Her body moved in practiced motions, knees lifting, arms reaching, heart pounding. She counted breaths, counted repetitions, counted seconds. 10 more, 5 more, just one more set. Her muscles burned. Sweat gathered at the back of her neck and between her shoulder blades. She ignored the urge to slow down, to soften. Whenever the thought of easing up surfaced, another thought immediately answered. Comfort is the enemy of progress. She didn't know where that sentence had come from. Perhaps something she had read or heard or simply made up, but she believed it, and so she pressed harder. Outside, the forest watched in its own silent, accepting way. Leaves stirred. A breeze slipped past the window. The world beyond her glass moved in cycles of expansion and rest, effort and ease. Inside, Elena only allowed half of that equation. When she finally let herself stop, her legs trembled beneath her. She placed her hands on her knees and bent forward, gasping for air. Her lungs burned. Her heart hammered against her ribs. For a brief, fragile moment, there was a chance to say to herself, "You did well." That was enough. But the thought never came. Instead, another list formed. You could have gone longer. You should have done the extra set. You shouldn't have paused in the middle. Her inner critic took notes, even when her body begged for kindness. She straightened slowly, sweat cooling into a light chill on her skin. Her hair stuck to her forehead, her face flushed pink from exertion. She caught a glimpse of herself in the small mirror hanging by the doorway. She looked strong, alive, human. But when her eyes met her own reflection, all she saw was a woman not yet finished, a project in progress, a before picture that never quite became an after. She looked away. In the kitchen, she washed her hands, filled a glass with water, and stood by the sink drinking it down. The water was cool and uncomplicated. It didn't promise transformation. It simply answered thirst. She almost let herself enjoy it. Then she remembered she wasn't supposed to break her juice fast with plain water until after mid-morning. Guilt flickered through her like a shadow. "Why did you do that?" she muttered under her breath. "You always ruin it somehow." The words were quiet but cutting. She rinsed the glass and set it aside, as if erasing evidence of her small rebellion. Then she reached for her detox tea ingredients, dried leaves, roots, and petals in glass jars with handwritten labels. She had researched each one. She knew their supposed benefits by heart. She assembled them with careful precision. A spoonful of this, 3 petals of that, just enough of the bitter roots to make her wince. The kettle whistled softly. Steam rose, fragrant and slightly earthy, as she poured hot water over the mixture. The scent filled the small kitchen, sharp and grounding. She let the tea steep, watching the swirling colors bloom and darken in the cup. It might have been a beautiful moment once the small ritual of making something warm for herself, but now it was just another task, another step in the plan, another condition she had to meet. When she took the first sip, the taste was strong and slightly harsh, coating her tongue with a medicinal bitterness. She lifted her chin and swallowed it anyway. "It's good for me," she whispered, almost like a spell. "It's good for me. It's good for me." The phrase repeated until it lost its meaning. By mid-morning, Elena's stomach ached, not from hunger exactly, but from the strange denial of real food. She had learned to ignore that feeling. She had learned to call it discipline. She walked through the cottage, tidying small things to keep her mind busy, folding blankets, straightening books, watering plants that drooped slightly in their clay pots. The plants responded quickly to the water leaves, lifting, soil darkening. They did not question whether they were worthy of it. They simply received what they needed and grew, Elena noticed. And something in her chest tugged. She moved to her bedroom and opened the wardrobe, scanning her clothes almost absent-mindedly. Dresses, sweaters, soft cotton shirts, some pieces she hadn't worn in months because they felt wrong on her body now, too tight, too revealing, too honest about who she really was. She picked up a dress she used to love, a simple, flowing fabric the color of summer skies. She held it against herself and looked in the mirror. It would still fit. She knew it would, but a quiet dread rose in her. What if it didn't look the way she remembered? What if she saw proof that she hadn't changed enough? What if it confirmed what she feared, that all her efforts still wasn't enough? Her hands trembled slightly. She folded the dress and placed it back, carefully, as though it were fragile. "Later," she whispered, "when I've improved more." There was always a later, never a now. Time moved on quietly. Shadows shifted across the floor. The cottage clock ticked with soft persistence. Her stomach knotted tighter, asking again and again for something simple and real bread, soup, fruit, anything warm. Instead, she poured herself another juice. This one was thicker, with carrot and ginger. It glowed orange in the glass, the color of sunset, of autumn leaves, of small joys. She drank it in measured sips, forcing herself to go slowly, to savor it, even though it did not satisfy her the way a real meal would have. "You can eat after noon," she reminded herself, "if you do well." The promise of food had become a reward, not a right. When noon finally arrived, it felt less like a natural moment and more like a negotiated settlement. Elena stood in front of her pantry shelves, considering what she was allowed to have. Not bread, not cheese, not anything that might feel comforting. She sliced cucumbers and tomatoes instead, a handful of leafy greens, a sprinkle of seeds for protein. She assembled the meal on a plate, making it as pretty as she could, as if presentation might fill the empty space where joy should be. She carried the plate to the table by the window and sat down. Outside, the forest seemed to glow under the gentle touch of afternoon light. Birds hopped among branches. Insects hummed faintly in the distance. She ate in small, careful bites, chewing slowly, counting each movement of her jaw. "This is enough," she told herself. It should be enough. But when the plate was empty, her body did not feel full. Not physically, not emotionally. She wanted something warm, something soft, something that reminded her of comfort and home. A memory surfaced: her grandmother's kitchen, the smell of fresh bread, the warmth of soup poured into chipped bowls, the way they used to eat without measuring, without weighing, without attaching morality to every mouthful. The memory was so vivid it almost hurt. She blinked it away and cleared her plate. Afternoon brought with it a familiar slump in her energy. Her eyelids felt heavy. Her limbs ached with a dull fatigue. A nap would have been so easy, just a short rest on the couch, beneath the knitted blanket folded neatly at its arm. She looked at the blanket. It seemed to call to her. She even walked over and ran her fingers along its soft, worn yarn. She imagined lying down, letting her body sink, letting her thoughts quiet. But before she could, her eyes flicked to the notebook still open on the table. No naps. The words glared up at her, a rule written by her own hand, but it felt as strict as if someone else had carved it there. "Come on," she scolded herself softly. "You're not a child. You don't need naps. You need discipline." She stepped away from the couch. Instead of resting, she made another cup of tea, this one lighter, with hints of chamomile and mint. She cradled it between her hands, but the warmth felt like something she had borrowed, not something she fully allowed herself to receive. She sipped, moved to her desk, and forced herself into tasks. Sorting papers, answering messages, planning out the rest of the week's routines. Her mind buzzed with numbers, calories, repetitions, minutes, days, until she expected to see results. Life compressed into metrics. She did not measure laughter. She did not measure joy. She did not measure how many moments she felt safe in her own skin. Those numbers, if she had counted them, might have told her something important. As evening drifted closer, the light outside shifted once more, turning soft and golden, then muted and grey. The forest began to quiet. The sky blushed with hints of pink. Shadows lengthened inside the cottage. Elena's body ached in that deep, lingering way that told the truth. She was tired, not just from today, but from many days before this one. She went to the bathroom and turned on the small light above the mirror. Her reflection stared back at her, framed in warm yellow. She studied her face, the faint dark circles beneath her eyes, the tightness of her jaw, the way her shoulders hunched slightly forward as if bracing against an invisible weight. "Why isn't it working?" she whispered. She had followed the rules. She had done the routines. She had obeyed the lists. Still, the feeling she chased, that magical sense of finally enough, never arrived. Her throat tightened. She pressed her palms against the edge of the sink and bowed her head. The cottage was so quiet she could hear the ticking clock in the next room, the faint creak of the wooden beams as the temperature shifted, the murmur of wind weaving through the trees outside. In that delicate silence, a small, almost inaudible thought rose. Maybe it's not your body that needs to change. The thought surprised her. It didn't sound like the harsh, critical voice she knew so well. It sounded gentler, curious, as if it came from a part of her that remembered something kinder. She straightened, breathing slowly. In, out, in again. But as quickly as the thought came, the familiar patterns pushed back. No, you just haven't done enough yet. Tomorrow you'll do better. Tomorrow you'll try harder. Then you'll feel different. She turned off the light and stepped back into the dimness of the hallway. The rituals of the cottage continued. Washing dishes, folding clothes, turning down the bed, setting out tomorrow's bottles, measuring tomorrow's ingredients. Outside, the forest eased into night with no sense of urgency. The leaves did not worry about their shape. The fox moving low through the underbrush did not question the softness at its belly or the strength in its legs. The moon, when it rose, did not try to be brighter or more polished. It simply shone as it was. Inside, Elena finished her last cup of herbal tea and stood for a moment by the window. The glass was cool beneath her fingertips. The night pressed close, dark but not unfriendly. She caught her own reflection faintly in the window, just a ghostly outline, barely there. A woman inside a cottage, inside a story she wasn't sure she had chosen. The day ended as it had begun, with a quiet vow. Tomorrow I will do better. Tomorrow I will finally feel like enough. She did not yet know that better would not come from more rules. She did not yet know that enough, had never been waiting at the end of a list. But something was beginning to shift, deep beneath the routines and the rituals, like a seed stirring far underground, a weariness that was not just physical, a hunger that was not just for food, a longing to be free of the measuring and the striving. The cottage held her as she moved through the darkened rooms, as she turned out the final light, as she slipped beneath the covers and closed her eyes. Outside, the trees stood watch. The night whispered softly. And even though she did not hear it clearly yet, a quieter truth was beginning to murmur. You were never meant to live your life as a project. You were never meant to earn the right to rest. Soon, her body would speak louder. Soon, she would no longer be able to ignore it. But for now, the rituals continued, until the evening she finally broke, and everything began to change. The day had stretched itself thin by the time Elena returned home. The sky outside was already beginning to dim, washing the cottage walls in a pale lavender glow. Evening had arrived not suddenly, but quietly, like a soft sigh through the trees, like a blanket being laid gently across the earth. Inside her, however, nothing felt gentle. Her body was tired in a way she could no longer ignore. Her legs felt heavy, her head buzzed with a faint pressure, and her breath moved through her chest with the hollow rhythm of someone who had been pushing herself too long, too hard. She closed the cottage door behind her and leaned against it for a moment. Just that, just leaning, letting the weight of her own body settle into the wooden frame. It wasn't much of a rest, but even that tiny pause felt like disobedience. The cottage greeted her with the familiar scent of dried lavender and the faint lingering bitterness of the detox tea she had made that morning. Usually, this fragrance felt clean, fresh, purposeful. Tonight, it felt suffocating. She moved into the small kitchen and filled a glass of water. Her hand trembled slightly as she lifted it to her lips. She drank slowly, feeling the coolness trickle down her throat, pooling somewhere deep in her stomach. Outside, the forest murmured in soft tones, leaves rustling, the distant call of a bird settling down for the night. Each sound felt like a reminder of a world that existed beyond her rules and routines, a world that breathed freely. Elena placed the glass down and pressed her palms flat against the countertop. Her shoulders sagged. Her breath wavered. She had done everything today. Every rule, every list, every piece of the plan, and yet the familiar emptiness was still there, hovering just beneath her ribs, whispering the same harsh refrain. Not enough, never enough, never quite enough. She closed her eyes and inhaled slowly, but her breath felt thin, frayed at the edges. She rubbed her temples. A dull ache pulsed behind her eyes, the kind of ache that came not from one day of strain, but from many. She opened her eyes again and looked around the cottage. The little wooden table by the window where she used to eat warm meals without counting bites. The armchair she'd loved curling up in during winter nights. a cup of cocoa between her hands, the knitted blanket draped over the couch, soft, comforting, untouched. She barely used these things anymore. Comfort had become something she believed she had to earn. Rest had become a reward she never managed to deserve. She moved to the window and looked outside. The forest was wrapped in the soft glow of dusk, a world painted in muted blues and grays, so still she could almost hear the quiet settling between the branches. The sight made something inside her chest tremble. She wished she could melt into that quiet. She wished she could feel at peace the way the forest seemed to, but the constant hum of self-critique drowned out the softness of the evening. Her legs suddenly felt too weak to stand. She moved to the small wooden chair beside the window, the same one she had sat in the day before, and lowered herself into it with a slow exhale. Her muscles slackened, relieved to finally let go, even for a moment. The wood of the chair creaked softly beneath her, a simple sound, a human sound. Elena folded her arms on the table and rested her forehead against them. At first, she just breathed. In, out, in, out. Her breath was shaky, uneven. She tried to steady it, but the more she tried, the more it trembled. The room felt too quiet, like silence pressing in from every side. The kind of silence that made it impossible to hide from yourself. A single tear slipped from the corner of her eye. She blinked, surprised, but the tear kept falling, tracing a warm line down her cheek and landing softly on her sleeve. She hadn't meant to cry. She hadn't even realized she needed to. She sat up slightly, wiped her cheek, and tried to gather herself, but the moment she pulled in another breath, something inside her chest loosened unexpectedly, painfully, and then it all broke. Tears began to fall in a slow, steady stream, not rushed, not dramatic, but quiet and deep, as if they had been waiting a very long time for permission to leave their hiding place. She covered her face with her hands. Her shoulders shook once, faintly. A soft sound escaped her, not a sob, just a long, trembling exhale. It felt like surrender, not the hopeless kind, but the exhausted kind. The kind that comes when your body has finally reached the limit of what it can carry alone. Her tears weren't angry. They weren't sharp or loud. They were the kind that came from months of pushing, striving, forcing, measuring, from holding herself together so tightly that something inside her had cracked under the pressure. She wasn't crying about the juice cleanses, or the workouts, or the strictness of her routine. She was crying because she had forgotten how to be gentle with herself. She was crying because rest felt like failure, because food felt like guilt, because her body felt like an enemy she had been battling for years. The truth washed through her in quiet waves. I don't know what else to fix. I don't know how to make myself enough. I don't know how to stop wanting to be someone else. She cupped her face in her hands, tears slipping between her fingers. Outside, the forest seemed to pause, as if listening. The trees stood patient and tall. The wind moved softly through the branches. The sky dimmed into deep twilight. Nature did not rush her. Nature did not ask her to try harder. Nature simply held the moment with her. After a long while, she didn't know how long the tears began to slow. Her breathing evened out. Her body softened, as if the crying had created just a little more space inside her chest. She leaned back in the chair, eyes swollen, cheeks damp, but her heart strangely lighter. Quiet filled the cottage again, but not the sharp, suffocating quiet from before. This quiet felt rounder, gentler, a little more forgiving. She wiped her cheeks with the sleeve of her sweater and gazed out the window again. The world outside was now a deep shade of blue, the first stars beginning to shimmer faintly in the sky. She watched as a single leaf drifted down from a tall birch tree, spiraling lightly, effortlessly, landing softly in the grass below. Something in that small moment held her attention. The leaf didn't resist falling. It didn't fight the wind. It didn't cling to the branch, insisting it should be stronger, more disciplined, more perfect. It let go when it was time. It trusted the ground beneath it. It surrendered to its own nature. Elena inhaled, and for the first time that day, the breath reached deeper into her lungs. She placed a hand lightly on her chest. Her heartbeat felt tired but steady, alive. A single thought rose, uninvited but strangely warm. What if I've been hurting myself, trying to become someone I'm not meant to be? She didn't answer the question. She didn't debate it. She simply let it hover there, soft and new, like a candle that had just been lit. Her body, as if sensing the shift, released a small, involuntary shudder, not from cold, but from something loosening, a knot untangling deep within her. For the first time in a very long time, she felt the faintest flicker of compassion for herself. Not pride, not confidence, not self-love. She wasn't there yet. Just compassion, a softness around the edges of her thoughts. And that was enough. The ache in her muscles remained. The lists still lay on the table. The self-critique still lingered in the corners of her mind. But something had changed. Something small, something quiet, something true. She exhaled slowly, allowing the breath to leave her body without forcing it. She rested her hands in her lap, palms facing upward, the posture of someone who, perhaps without fully realizing it, was ready to receive instead of constantly give. She whispered into the dim room, her voice shaky but sincere, "I'm so tired of fighting myself." The cottage absorbed the confession like a sponge, soaking it into the wood, the walls, the air itself. Outside, an owl called softly from the trees, a low, echoing note that drifted through the twilight like a message. Elena lifted her gaze to the window and let the sound settle into her. It felt grounding, ancient, wise. She didn't know it then, but that moment, sitting in her small wooden chair, eyes swollen, breath unsteady, heart aching, marked the beginning of a different kind of journey. Not one of improvement, not one of perfection, but one of listening, of softening, of unlearning, of finding her way back to herself. She stayed in that chair until the last traces of daylight faded from the sky, not planning, not fixing, not striving, just being a woman in a quiet cottage, breathing through a truth she could no longer outrun. And the night, kind as ever, wrapped itself around her like a gentle embrace, holding her exactly as she was. Morning arrived in a muted hush, as though the world itself wished to keep its voice soft for Elena's sake. Light seeped gently through her curtains, a pale gold that brushed across her blankets and nudged the room awake. But Elena didn't move right away. Her eyes opened slowly, cautiously, as if afraid that the ache from yesterday would return the moment she breathed fully. Her body felt heavy, but not with the familiar strain of overexertion. It was a different heaviness, the kind that follows a long cry, the kind that signals something inside has cracked open, letting air reach places that have been closed for far too long. She touched a hand to her cheek. It was tender, as if remembering the tears that had traveled there. For a moment, she lay still in the quiet room, and in that stillness, she felt something unusual. She didn't want to begin her rituals. Not the juice bottles, not the notebook, not the strict list waiting on the kitchen table. Her body felt gently defiant. It whispered softly but clearly, not today. She wasn't ready for rules. She wasn't ready for perfection. She wasn't ready to return to the version of herself who measured every breath. What she wanted, what she needed, was simply to move without a plan, to breathe without counting, to exist without earning it. So she rose slowly, letting her feet find the floor, and walked to the window. The forest stood outside, wrapped in silver morning mist that clung to the ferns and drifted along the tree trunks like delicate smoke. It looked peaceful, unhurried, welcoming. She felt a pull in her chest, a quiet invitation she hadn't felt in a long time. She dressed in soft clothes, not the tight workout leggings, not the fitted tops, but loose linen, the color of early morning clouds. She pulled her hair back lightly and stepped outside into the cool air. Asterisk, asterisk. The forest path began just a few steps from her cottage door, a narrow trail she used to walk often before everything became a system, before she traded long, wandering mornings for routines and restrictions. As she crossed the threshold between her yard and the woods, she inhaled deeply. The forest smelled of damp earth, moss, pine needles, and the faint sweetness of decaying leaves. It smelled like life lived slowly. With each step, the world around her softened. Bird song flitted through the branches, gentle and melodic. A breeze whispered against her skin, carrying the scent of rain from somewhere far away. The path under her feet was springy, forgiving. There was no pace to keep, no target to meet, no timer running, just breath, just movement, just her. Her shoulders slowly loosened, her jaw unclenched. Her steps became quieter, as though she were learning to walk in harmony with the world around her rather than against it. time seemed to stretch. She wasn't sure how far she had walked when she noticed a figure ahead, a woman bent slightly over a patch of wild herbs, her hands moving with slow, deliberate ease. Elena froze for a moment, uncertain whether to continue. Encounters with strangers weren't common this deep in the woods, but the woman's presence didn't feel startling or out of place. She seemed woven into the forest itself, as natural as the ferns at her feet. The woman straightened and glanced over her shoulder. Their eyes met. Her gaze was warm, steady, ancient in a way that didn't mean old, but wise, rooted, grounded. She wore a long, earth-colored skirt that brushed against the grass, and her gray hair was braided loosely down her back. A woven basket hung from the crook of her arm, filled with sprigs of herbs, wildflowers, and leaves still beaded with morning dew. She smiled, not surprised at all to see Elena standing there. "Good morning," she said, her voice soft and full of calm. Elena managed a small nod. "Good morning." The woman turned fully toward her, her eyes traveling with gentle curiosity over Elena's full face, not assessing, not judging, simply noticing. "You're carrying too much," the woman said quietly, as if stating a simple fact about the weather. Elena's breath caught. She hadn't told anyone about the heaviness in her chest. She hadn't spoken to anyone about the exhaustion, the pressure, the relentless self-critique. She hadn't even admitted half of it to herself. Yet this stranger saw it immediately. Elena swallowed. I suppose I am." The woman nodded, her expression full of knowing. Most people do, without even realizing. The body shows it long before the mind listens. Her words sank into Elena like warm tea. The woman lowered her basket and gestured to the patch of herbs she had been tending. "Come," she said, "let me show you something." Elena hesitated for only a moment before stepping closer. The ground was damp beneath her feet. Dew clung to her shoes. A soft breeze brushed her face. "These plants," the woman began, pointing to a cluster of small, bright green leaves, grow differently each year. Some tall, some small, some with curled edges, some with spots of sun bleaching. None of them match. None of them try to. She moved her hand gently over them without touching. "And yet," she continued, "they all thrive, not because they're perfect, but because they grow in their own way." Elena crouched beside her, watching the leaves move in the soft wind. They were imperfect, asymmetrical. Some had been nibbled by insects, some had bruises from rainstorms, some grew in odd directions, but they were alive, vibrant, rooted. "They don't compare themselves," the woman said simply. "They don't apologize for taking up space. They don't force themselves to grow differently than how they naturally are." Elena felt something tightening in her chest begin just slightly to unwind. The woman looked at her with kind eyes. "Humans forget they are made of the same things: soil, water, sun, seasons. You are not separate from nature. You are nature." Elena's breath trembled. She blinked against the sudden sting of tears she hadn't expected. "I've been trying so hard," she whispered. "So hard to be better. To fix everything." The woman nodded slowly. "I know." Elena looked at her sharply. "How could you know?" A soft, almost mischievous smile curved the woman's lips. "Because I tried the same once. I chased perfection until I couldn't breathe. Until I forgot what it felt like to be inside my own skin." Her hand brushed the rim of her basket. "It was only when I stopped fighting myself that I finally healed." The words hit Elena like a gentle wave, not knocking her down, but washing over the cracks in her heart, filling them with something warm. They stood there in quiet for a long moment. Birds flitted from branch to branch above them. Sunlight filtered through the canopy in soft, trembling beams. The forest felt like a cathedral of moss and wind. Elena exhaled shakily. "I don't know how to stop." The woman placed a hand over her own heart. "You begin here," she said, "by asking your body what it needs, not what you think it should be." Elena stared at her, the words sinking deep. It sounded simple, almost too simple, but something in her, something tired and tender, recognized the truth in it. The woman lifted a sprig of herbs and held it out to Elena. "This is lemon balm," she said. "It reminds the heart to calm down, to soften, to rest." Elena took it gently, inhaling its faint citrus scent. "It grows quietly," the woman continued. "Not loudly, not quickly, but steadily, kindly." She gave Elena a knowing look. "You could learn from it." Elena felt a tear escape the corner of her eye. She brushed it away, embarrassed, but the woman shook her head softly. "No shame in tears," she said. "They're the body's way of watering the places that hurt." Elena pressed her lips together, overwhelmed by how seen she felt, not exposed, but understood. The woman stood, gathering her basket. "Walk with me," Elena followed without hesitation. They moved through the forest slowly, the woman's steps unhurried, her presence calm and grounding. She pointed out plants here and there, yarrow, chamomile, sage, each with its own way of healing, its own way of growing. Elena listened, not because she needed the knowledge, but because the rhythm of the woman's voice soothed something frayed inside her. After a while, they reached a small clearing where sunlight spilled generously between the trees. The woman turned to her. "I don't know your story," she said, "but I see your struggle." Elena lowered her gaze. "I'm so tired," she admitted. "Tired of trying, tired of failing, tired of never being enough for myself." The woman stepped closer and gently tipped Elena's chin upward, guiding her to meet her eyes. "You are not failing," she said, her voice firm and tender at once. "You are simply carrying expectations that were never meant to be yours." Elena's breath hitched. The woman continued, her thumb brushing Elena's cheek in the lightest touch. "You do not need to shrink yourself to deserve peace." A tear fell, then another. Her shoulders shook, but the woman held her gaze steady, unafraid of her vulnerability. "You are already enough," the woman whispered. Your body knows it. It has been trying to tell you. Elena covered her mouth with her hand, a quiet sob slipping through soft, aching, real. The woman placed her hands gently on Elena's shoulders, grounding her. Stop listening to the voice that tells you to be smaller, she said. Listen to the voice that wants you to live. Elena closed her eyes, letting the words sink deep into the places where her self-worth had frayed. When she opened them again, the forest looked different, not because it had changed, but because something inside her had shifted, just enough to let the world feel softer. The woman stepped back, giving Elena space. Come back to the woods whenever you forget, she said. Nature will remind you who you are. Elena swallowed hard, nodding through her tears. Thank you. The woman smiled, a knowing, timeless smile. Go gently, she said. Your body is tired of being at war. Then, with the quiet grace of someone utterly at home in the world, she turned down another path and disappeared into the trees, leaves rustling softly in her wake. Elena stood alone in the clearing, her heart beating a little slower, a little steadier. She inhaled deeply, the scent of pine and sun-warmed earth filling her lungs. For the first time in what felt like years, she felt here, present, real. Not perfect, not improved, just her. And for the first fragile moment, that felt like enough. The days that followed her meeting with the woman in the woods felt different, subtly, quietly, like the first gentle shift of wind before a season changes. Elena didn't wake with the same urgency she once did. The thought, today I will become the woman I'm supposed to be, no longer rushed to greet her at dawn. Instead, her mornings began slowly, like a candle being lit rather than a fire being struck. On the first morning after the encounter, she opened her eyes to the pale gray light of early dawn streaming softly through her curtains. Her body felt heavy, but in a softer way, like a blanket draped around her shoulders rather than a weight pressing down. She lay there for a moment, listening to the quiet, to her breath, to the subtle hum of her own body. It didn't tell her to get up. It didn't urge her to follow a plan. It didn't demand improvement. It simply existed. And so did she. She let her hand rest over her chest, feeling the slow, steady beat beneath her palm. It felt like a small animal curled up inside her, a gentle, tired creature that had been ignored for too long. Good morning, she whispered to herself, unsure why the words formed, but strangely warmed by them. When she finally stood, she didn't reach for her notebook. She didn't check her list. She didn't unscrew a bottle of juice or force herself through her rituals of discipline. Instead, she walked to the window. The forest looked different this morning, not because the trees had changed, but because her eyes had. Light filtered through the branches like a soft blessing, and the mist curled playfully along the ground, twining itself between roots and rocks. She opened the window and leaned out slightly. Cold air kissed her cheeks, her collarbone, the hollow of her throat. Birdsong drifted toward her like threads of gold. She breathed in deeply, and the breath went all the way down. Asterisk, asterisk. Her feet found the floor, barefoot and quiet. She moved into the kitchen, where the glass bottles of juice from the day before still stood in their neat line on the counter. For a moment, she stared at them. Once, they had symbolized control, discipline, a promise that she could shape herself into something better. Now, they just looked like containers of liquid. Nothing more, nothing magical, nothing necessary. She didn't throw them away. She didn't drink them either. She simply left them where they were and reached instead for a kettle. The morning called for warmth, not restriction. She boiled water and chose chamomile, soft, floral, soothing. She watched the steam rise, curling like small ghosts into the air. The scent reminded her of her grandmother's kitchen, where chamomile tea had always been a sign of comfort, not rules. She wrapped her hands around the warm mug and sat at the kitchen table, allowing herself to sip, not swallow hurriedly, to taste, not judge, to receive, not earn. The warmth spread through her chest slowly, as if melting a thin layer of armor she had long forgotten she wore. Asterisk, asterisk. After her tea, she stepped outside. She didn't tell herself it was a walk. It wasn't exercise. It wasn't part of a plan. It was simply movement. The forest welcomed her like an old friend. Dew-covered ferns brushed her ankles. Sunlight filtered through the canopy in trembling beams. The air tasted of pine sap, cool soil, and the faint sweetness of wildflowers. She walked with no destination, letting her feet wander the path that unfolded before her. A small squirrel darted up a tree trunk, pausing halfway to peer down at Elena with curious eyes before disappearing upward in quick, nimble leaps. A bird flew low across the path, its wings beating the air with soft, rhythmic whispers. Each sound felt like a reminder that life didn't need to be perfect to be beautiful. Her shoulders softened. Her breath became deeper. Her thoughts slowed from frantic sharpness to gentle ripples. For the first time in a very long time, she felt no need to rush toward a better version of herself. She simply existed among the trees. Asterisk, asterisk. Later that afternoon, Elena returned to her cottage. She felt lighter, not physically, not in a way she could measure, but in a way that made her chest feel just a little more spacious. She moved through her home differently, touching things she hadn't touched in months. The blanket on the couch, soft and warm beneath her fingertips. The stack of books beside the armchair, covered in a thin layer of dust. The ceramic bowl she had made years ago, slightly misshapen but lovely in its own imperfect way. She picked it up, running her thumb along its uneven rim. She had always liked it for its imperfections, yet she had never allowed the same affection toward herself. A small ache formed in her chest, but it wasn't the old ache of failure. It was something gentler, a beginning, a remembering. Asterisk, asterisk. Around noon, Her stomach rumbled a sound she had grown used to ignoring. But today, she didn't deny it. She didn't negotiate with it. She didn't tell it to wait until she had earned a meal. She simply walked to the pantry, choosing what felt nourishing instead of what felt allowed. She sliced an apple, its crisp scent filling the room. She added a small piece of cheese, a handful of nuts, a slice of bread she warmed in the pan, letting it crisp slightly, releasing the comforting aroma of toasted grain. When she sat down to eat, she didn't count bites. She didn't analyze nutrients. She didn't scold herself. She lifted the first piece of warm bread to her lips, inhaled its simple scent, and took a slow, grateful bite. Warmth spread through her chest, not from the food alone, but from the kindness she'd shown herself. Every small, gentle act became a thread that began stitching her back together. Asterisk, asterisk. Throughout the week, the changes continued quiet and unforced. She stopped timing her walks, stopped organizing her hours into punishments and rewards, stopped treating her body like a stubborn project. Little by little, she began asking herself a new question. What do I need? Sometimes the answer was rest. Sometimes it was stretching. Sometimes it was stepping outside to feel the wind on her face. Sometimes it was something warm to eat, not because it was allowed, but because it made her feel cared for. Her routines didn't disappear, they softened. Movement became gentler, like water instead of stone. Meals became moments of comfort instead of judgment. Sleep became permission rather than reward. One morning, she even sat in the armchair with her knitted blanket draped around her shoulders, reading a book while sunlight pooled quietly at her feet. She didn't tell herself it was unproductive. She didn't hurry to stand. She simply existed in the warmth, and her body, so used to being pushed, measured, and scolded, began to respond. Not by changing shape, not by shrinking, not by becoming more perfect, but by softening, releasing, trusting. Her breath no longer sat at the top of her chest. It flowed deeper. Her shoulders no longer locked in tension. They lowered inch by inch. Her heartbeat felt steadier, less frantic, more human. And Elena herself felt more like someone she remembered, someone she thought she had lost. Asterisk, asterisk. One evening, just before sunset, she returned to the forest. The air was still and warm, the light golden, the path dappled in soft shadows. She walked until she reached the small clearing where she had stood with the woman days before. The memory washed through her in a tender wave, the gentle eyes, the quiet truths, the simple wisdom that had begun the unraveling of her old life. Elena stepped into the clearing and let her fingers brush the tops of the grasses. They swayed beneath her touch, bending easily but never breaking. She whispered into the quiet, "Thank you." She wasn't sure who she was thanking. The woman, the forest, her own body for still being here despite everything. Maybe all of them. The breeze curled around her in response, soft as breath, soft as understanding. She closed her eyes and let it move through her, lifting strands of her hair, touching the edges of her tangled thoughts. The woman's words echoed inside her. You do not need to shrink yourself to deserve peace. Elena placed a hand on her ribs, feeling the rise and fall beneath her palm. I'm trying, she whispered. I'm learning. It wasn't a declaration. It wasn't a vow. It was a promise made quietly to herself, one she didn't have to earn, one she didn't have to perfect. Just a beginning. And in that small clearing, beneath the rustling leaves and the soft gold of dusk, Elena felt something she had not felt in a very long time. Not joy, not confidence, not transformation, but peace. A small, steady ember of peace glowing faintly in her chest. She knew it would waver. She knew the old habits would call out to her again. She knew healing wasn't a straight path, but a gentle, meandering one. But she also knew this. She was returning to herself, slowly, softly, tenderly. And this time, she would not abandon that journey for anyone. Not even for the voice inside her that once demanded perfection. The forest breathed around her, holding her like an old friend, and Elena quietly, bravely breathed back. The day had been long, but not in the way her days once were. Not heavy with lists, not tight with pressure, not carved into segments of achievement and failure. It had been long the way summer days are long, stretching gently, unfolding slowly, carrying her from morning to evening with a rhythm that felt kind, almost tender. She had walked in the forest that morning, her steps unhurried. She had eaten warm soup for lunch, savoring each spoonful without measuring or judging. She had rested in the late afternoon, lying beneath her knitted blanket as sunlight filtered through the curtains in soft, golden threads. Her body felt different now, not changed in shape, not sculpted or improved, but softer inside. Less guarded, less braced for battle. It was early evening when she stepped outside again, drawn by the fading warmth of the day. The air held that gentle hush that arrives just before dusk, when the world seems to take a slow, collective inhale. The forest at the edge of her cottage glowed in muted amber. Leaves shimmered as though touched by gold. Birdsong softened. The earth exhaled the cool scent of night beginning to rise. She felt a quiet pull toward the meadow she had visited with the woman, a place that had imprinted itself on her heart. So she followed the familiar path, letting it guide her without thinking. Asterisk, asterisk. The meadow waited for her like an open palm, wide, soft, holding the last light of the day. Tall grasses swayed in the breeze, brushing gently against one another like whispers. Fireflies blinked lazily above the ground, tiny stars drifting in the warm air. Elena stepped into the clearing and breathed in deeply. The air tasted sweet, floral, earthy, touched with the coolness of approaching night. For a moment, she simply stood there, letting the beauty of the place settle into her. Her chest rose, her shoulders eased, Her jaw softened. It felt like the meadow understood her, like it had been waiting. She walked toward the center, and Des lowered herself onto the ground. The grass gave easily beneath her weight, soft and cool against her legs. She leaned back onto her elbows, then onto her back completely, until she lay looking up at the sky. The sky was a deep, gentle blue. Clouds splashed faintly at the edges. Stars pricked through one by one, tiny pinpoints of silver. She felt the earth cradle her, the ground firm and steady beneath her spine. Her own weight supported without condition. It was the first time in years she had allowed herself to simply lie down outside, like this, not for exercise, not as part of a routine, but as a human being needing a moment of rest. She inhaled, and the breath reached places inside her she didn't know had been locked. Asterisk, asterisk. A thought rose unbidden, quiet as a leaf drifting through the air. I don't need to become anything right now. The truth of it settled into her like warm water. For so long, she had believed she needed to earn her own approval. For so long, she had reached for a version of herself that always lived just out of reach. For so long, she had tied her worth to numbers, routines, restrictions, control. But lying here, beneath an opening sky, she felt farther away from that life than she ever had. She lifted a hand above her face, watching the silhouette of her fingers against the growing twilight. Her hands were strong, her nails short, uneven, her palms soft in the center and rougher along the edges. Real hands, living hands, hands that had held so much burdens, expectations, dreams she had forced into shapes they were never meant to take. She turned her palm toward the sky. "I'm tired," she whispered. The words floated upward, gentle and honest. The meadow didn't judge her tiredness. Neither did the sky, neither did the earth. Only she had been harsh. Only she had demanded more than she could give. She pressed her palm lightly to her heart. It beat steadily beneath her hand, one quiet thump after another. Faithful, patient, alive. A lump formed in her throat. This heart had carried her through every moment of striving, every moment of self-doubt, every whispered criticism, and still it beat for her. Still it stayed. Still it hoped she would one day notice its devotion. She closed her eyes, tears slipping silently from the corners. "I'm sorry," she breathed, not to anyone else, to herself, to her body, to the heart she had ignored for so long. The words trembled out of her, fragile but true. "I'm so sorry." A breeze touched her cheek, then cool and gentle, brushing the tear away like a thumb across her skin. It felt like forgiveness. Asterisk, asterisk. Above her, stars multiplied, some bright, some faint, some barely shimmering. None of them tried to outshine the others. None of them apologized for where they were placed. None questioned whether they were enough. They simply existed, each with their own strength, their own glow, their own story of light. Elena felt her breath catch softly. Maybe she, too, was allowed to glow without earning it, without shrinking, without striving. Maybe she was allowed to be a star in her own quiet way. She placed both hands over her ribs now, feeling the steady rise and fall. Her breath no longer sounded like a forced rhythm. It sounded like a song, a low, tender lullaby her body had known all along, but she had forgotten how to hear. A realization unfurled inside her slowly, like a blossom opening petal by petal. I am already enough. It wasn't a thought forced by affirmation apps or self-help books. It wasn't shouted or stern or practiced. It was a truth she felt in her bones, in her lungs, in the soft weight of her body resting peacefully in the grass. She had been enough the whole time. Enough when she woke each morning. Enough when she tried. Enough when she failed. Enough when she cried. Enough when she rested. Enough simply because she was alive. Her body had known it. Her heart had whispered it. The forest had understood it. Even the stranger woman had seen it instantly. But Elena had needed to come to this place in this moment, lying beneath this open sky, to finally know it for herself. Her tears flowed without pain now, soft tears, warm tears, the kind that heal rather than wound, the kind that say, you made it through, you learned, you stayed, you're here. She let them fall, unafraid, asterisk, asterisk. After a long while, her tears slowed, her breathing deepened, her body felt heavy but comfortable, as though she belonged exactly where she was. Fireflies drifted closer now, swirling gently above her like golden embers. One settled on a blade of grass near her hand, glowing faintly. She smiled softly. The world around her seemed to breathe, with her trees swaying slowly, grass brushing lightly against her arms, night sounds rising like a quiet choir. She whispered into the dark, "Thank you." She wasn't sure whether she said it to the meadow, her own body, the wise woman in the woods, or the universe itself. Maybe all of them. Another breath, deep, full, expansive. She turned onto her side, curling slightly, the way one might curl under a blanket on a cold night. The earth was firm beneath her, grounding her. The sky stretched endlessly above, reminding her she was part of something vast, something ancient, something beautiful. She didn't feel small in that vastness. She felt held. And in that quiet cradle of nature and night, Elena felt a peace she had chased for years, only to discover it had been waiting for her the entire time. Not at the end of a plan, not at the end of a perfect routine, not at some imagined future version of herself, but here, now, inside the woman she had always been. Enough, already enough, more than she ever knew. The night deepened quietly around her, soft and safe, as she closed her eyes and let herself drift into the gentlest sleep she had felt in years. The last thought that kissed her mind before she slipped fully into dreaming was simple and true, and finally hers. I am whole. I am worthy, and I am home